Thanks for joining me, Dr. Jerry Washington. It's very fitting that I we met during research on this topic, and it's very appropriate. I'm happy that you're one of the first people to do this with me, considering this goes into the research that we both care about. Uh,
Yes.
this is Resume Revelators, a hired calling podcast, and so when this all gets set up properly, I will send people to come on the show a survey beforehand, like we did, because this also is going to go into research.
Good,
Because
good.
people that we're going to be working with are veterans or in the veteran community and can
Mhm.
help out a lot in this space. So unfortunately, I'll probably ask you some of the same things I've asked you before, but not really going down the deep road into those things. So first off, I guess, do you listen to podcasts?
I do. I do. I do more the just the basic audio podcasts. I don't really get into the blogs or the video podcasts. Most of them are just, audio. I do a lot of audio books mostly, but do review some podcasts every now and again.
What makes a good podcast to you?
I think for me, it's the topic, of course, and the pacing of the podcast. And when I talk about pacing, I mean that we're not glossing over concepts and you spend time on the concept, you let the concept develop and not just hit the questions and go, because a lot of times there's a lot to say about a particular subject. And sometimes we're so concerned about the next question that has to be asked, that particular topic doesn't get enough justice.
Thank you for that. All right. So you are a veteran of the United States Marine Corps. What was your rank when you retired, and how many years total did you serve?
Yeah, so I was a master sergeant, E8, when I retired. I had been a master sergeant for about 4 years. I retired at 23 years. It was 22 years and 11 months and some days. So when you retire, it's always at the end of the month. So I didn't make the 23-year mark.
Okay.
I was a day off. So I always say, though, I retired at 23 years because essentially it was.
And so what was your main MOS or your final MOS whenever you retired?
Yeah. So as a combat engineer, you stay a combat engineer all the way through. You don't change MOSs when you reach, E7 or E8 or something like that. So I was a 1371 combat engineer from right out of MOS school, and I stayed. So I do have a few other MOSs under my belt. I did recruiting duty, so I did that for a while. And then I also am a operations and tactics instructor, which later in my career received MOS designator as well.
So then your time on recruiting duty also gives you some perspective on military careers, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And then, so I know you, and I know you have a doctorate degree. It's a rarity for military members to get out and get a doctorate degree, let alone enlisted veterans like us to go out and get doctorate degrees. What drove you to go all the way to a doctorate degree?
So education was always something I said I was going to do. And I spent a lot of time throughout my Marine Corps career dabbling in it and never putting, my complete effort, I guess you could say, into it. So after I retired, I said, I am going to go as far as possible. I thought a master's degree was going to be it. But while I was doing my master's, I realized I wanted to dig a little deeper into certain concepts I was looking at.
How many months after separation from the Marine Corps did you begin looking for your first job?
So I started looking actually well before I knew what I wanted to do. So right at 2011, as I was leaving Japan, heading to 29 Palms, California, I knew what I wanted to do when I retired. I had spent 6 years doing facilities management while in Japan. So I knew that I could relatively easily transition over and continue doing facilities management. So once in 2011, so that's roughly about 5 years before I retired, I started really looking at the facilities management field and what I needed to do to be able to transition into that field. So roughly about, I say 2015, 14, 15 timeframe, I really started, looking at different organizations, reading job descriptions, and just figuring out how I needed to design my resume to show what I've done.
5 years is pretty early from what I've found from my research. So congrats on getting started early. What veteran support organizations did you use and what did you think of them?
So I used a full gambit of them, So I did the regular TRS that the Marine Corps provides. I did what's called at the time VTAP, which was Veteran Transition Assistance, and that is still around. I think they've changed their name a little bit, but the VTAP was the most effective, along with transition support, which is another program that provides training. Both those two programs were managed by non-military folks that just had a passion to help military folks. And so they brought a whole new perspective to the table. Not only that, both groups had deep connections in the HR field throughout, Orange County, LA, San Diego. So the network was really wide and you could get a chance to talk to a lot of different people. So through the VTAP, I had an opportunity to talk to several different facilities managers. I also had a coach that helped me with my resume, helped me, before I had an interview, things like that. And then on the other side with transition support, I got OSHA training, safety training outside of OSHA, Lean Six Sigma, Green Belt, all of those different services. And they were free for me.
Thank you for that. And I'll figure out how to put the links and post those in here. Could you just,
certain. I can share those with you.
I know who they are. I meant for listeners or viewers, because those are two great organizations that you just mentioned there.
Certainly.
Make sure people have the right part of the purpose is people getting the right connections to the right resources, because there are people who don't know these things exist, right? VTS.
Correct. Yep.
Sarah, I've talked to Russell Levy in person. I know how he did it. It's fantastic. Russell's done a great thing for this community, and I just want to help him advertise that.
Yes.
Thank you for that. And I'm going to change gears on you a little bit here and ask you some questions. If you could just respond with a 1 to 5, and you'll see why when this is over.
Okay.
So 1 being you don't, 5 being you do all the time, right? So I sometimes chat with strangers in the grocery store or bank line.
5.
I don't tend to worry or feel overly anxious about life.
3.
I have tried some techniques to boost my intuition, such as meditation, or just going to a quiet place.
5.
I nearly always expect good things to happen to me in the near future.
3.5.
We'll go with 3 or 4, buddy.
Yeah, I'll go with a 4.
All right. Making math hard over here. My computer is not cooperating very well either. There we go. 4. I try for what I want from life, even if the chances of success seem slim.
5.
I expect most of the people that I meet to be pleasant and helpful.
5.
I tend to look on the bright side of things whenever something happens to me.
4.
I believe that even negative events will work out well for me in the long run.
5.
I don't dwell on the things that haven't worked out well for me in the past.
4.
I try to learn from errors that I've made in the past.
5.
All right. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's obvious here you scored very high. And these questions are from the luck test from Dr. Richard Wiseman, talks about how lucky people are. It's about, being able to change your luck. And I don't mean at the gambling table in the casino when you're trying to hit blackjack. It's about sometimes people get stuck in this rut where they think the world is against them. They can't find a job. They can't do this. They can't do that. They don't have friends. They're suffering, but they don't reach out, right? They're not extroverted enough. And all of these things that I just asked you tie back into things that people say have made them lucky. And there's a whole set of research on this from Dr. Richard Wiseman that talks about, ways that you can really improve your luck. So it seems like you think you're a pretty lucky person. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I don't know Dr. Wiseman's definition of luck or the what he's using as a term luck. I do have a nuanced view of luck, and I can give that to you, and maybe it overlaps quite well with Dr. Wiseman. So there's probabilities that things are going to happen, right, within our existence as we move through life. There's a probability that X will happen. So, for example, the probability of me being born in the United States, the probability of me being born in 1974, and then the probability of this or that. Well, we have no control realistically over the probabilities as we understand them right now. However, because those probabilities and we have no control over, there are some areas that we do have control over. And if we push ourselves into the areas that we can control and learn, and even when we don't think we can control them, that we can learn how to influence them, then when those probabilities, those situations arise where we're prepared enough to take on that probability of whether it's a good, positive, or bad, we're in a position to influence which direction that may fall. And so that's kind of my understanding of luck, is that, it's kind of that whole saying of being prepared for an opportunity will increase the likelihood that opportunity will be used or accomplished.
I think a lot of it does overlap to what you just said there, right? Because it's about influencing. And the question from Dr. Wiseman about influencing your surroundings or being willing to be influenced by your surroundings, right? Having conversations with people you don't know, trying
Right.
to going and doing things you didn't do before,
Yeah.
new experiences, and part of that is influencing your surroundings, right?
Yeah. I got a pretty cool story. So I was on recruiting duty in Austin, Texas, and I was at a gas station, and I had of course, a government vehicle. And so we had to go inside, of course, the place to do the gas, right, with the gas card. So I go inside, I'm putting the gas or paying for the gas and everything. And I turn around to walk out. And as I'm walking out, I'm in uniform. As I'm walking out, there's a person, young guy, walking in. And at that point, I had a choice, right? I could say something to him, or I didn't have to say something to him, or I could hold the door for him or not hold the door for him. Well, I chose to hold the door for him, and I also chose to say something to him. And I just simply said, "How's your day?" And he says, "My day's going okay." And I said, "Well, I hope it gets better for you." And that's it. I laid a seed is what I felt, right? I didn't do anything else. Later that day, I'm sitting in my office, and I get a call, and it's a good friend of mine from Austin South, right? And I was in Austin North. He was in Austin South, and he goes, "Hey, Wash," that's what they call me, Wash. "Hey, Wash, hey, just want to let you know, thank you." And I had no clue what he was talking about. And of course, that guy went to the recruiting station, walked in there, and decided that he wanted to join the Marine Corps. And he had always had an idea of something he wanted to do like that. But the way I engaged with him tipped him to go in there. Now, probability would say, what if I stood there and talked to him? Maybe I could have put him in, or maybe that would have been too much for him. So that's where the probability comes into play. I took the opportunity to say something. I didn't directly benefit from it. However, that person did benefit from it by deciding to join the Marine Corps and doing something that he had always had an idea he wanted to do.
That's a really good story, and how you influence his day.
Yeah.
And so we're taking a small tangent here because you mentioned your time as a recruiter. And so my nephew was just here. Actually, my nephew-in-law, he's my niece's husband, was just here this past week for he was on leave, and he's a Army MP by by training and just left recruiter school, going to be a permanent recruiter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because they've changed. They don't have Army staff NCOs doing military police stuff because it's all civilians. And so I wished him the best of luck going to do it. I've been smart because I mean, probably not, I'm not saying that being a military recruiter is the most important job right now, individually, but collectively for our country,
Right.
military recruiters are doing the most important job of anybody right now because of the threats that we're facing and the inability right now to hit the manning numbers across the board, except for the Marine Corps. Not to the Marine Corps horn, it's just this what it. But I mean, I'm not trying to scare anybody, but if you watch the news, the threats are real and it's getting kind of
Yeah.
crazy out there. And part of this show is about not creating, it's showing these success stories that veterans have about getting better jobs when they get out. Because all we see are the horror stories, right? But there are good news stories, and where are they? And how do people get to that level? What are people doing? What's Jerry doing to get to the level where he is reaching career satisfaction? Which is kind of the next set of questions I have. That it's about how satisfied are you in your career, and how do you reach that? How do you determine what is satisfaction in your career?
Mm.
And I don't think veterans, as you're transitioning out of the military, we don't think about that. That hits us in the face when we're 6 months into this new job that we can't stand, and it's just terrible. And I mean, one person I had interviewed during my research, he was a Marine Corps staff NCO in psychology operations, is now working in New York City in finance. He had a really cool job in the Marine Corps, psychological operations. Now he is doing this really cool job working on Wall Street, and he says it doesn't even compare to the military, not even close. He can't find job satisfaction despite making probably three times more, now he was then working on Wall Street, getting a degree from Columbia, despite, all the great stuff happening there. We got to figure out how do we define job satisfaction when you leave the military. And I think also that we know that people put a lot of their identity into their jobs. Some people do, some people don't. I think it's pretty obvious that military veterans, they've been doing that. It's been their identity forever, right? And they struggle to find jobs that they can work to bring the same level of satisfaction. But we got to figure out ways to teach them how to find that level of satisfaction elsewhere in their lives. You may not get that from your career.
Yeah, no, I agree. What you're really speaking about is something that I had to figure it out for myself, and I think that's the important part is figuring it out for yourself, and then realizing that you may not have figured it out completely, but you have a process in place to continue learning. Right? Like you really hit me with it when you said you may not find a job that satisfies you like the one you had before. And I think a lot of veterans experience that. I know I did. And it really comes down to me, and I had to give it a lot of thought, is that the importance of my job, right? Like when I was a Marine and I deployed to Iraq, I deployed to Afghanistan, there were life and death situations. And I'm not experiencing that level of importance, at my work. And so I have to find ways to still find that sense of belonging or that sense of importance within my job. But one thing that I realized is that it doesn't necessarily have to be at where I work. It just needs to be part of my life or what I do. And that's how I mitigated that by realizing that what I do as a facilities manager, I do keep people safe. I guess you could say that, if I don't do my job as well as I could, that maybe someone could slip on the floor and hurt themselves. But it's not the same level, right? As what I would find in the Marine Corps is making sure a Marine is very well trained to do their job when we go to, Iraq or whatever. But I have to kind of spread that out throughout my entire identity and not just at my work. It has to be spread out. And I've been able to do that for me, and it works for me by not only being involved in what I do at work, but being involved what I do at home, being involved when I do a podcast with a good friend. And I find that I can find that level of satisfaction that I felt from the Marine Corps, but it actually feels even better because it's throughout everything that I do on a daily basis. I read an article years ago. It's called On the Nature of Identity Work. And I took a lot of notes on this. And over the years, this was like 2016, right after I retired, that I found this article. And I started reading. I really trying to wrestle with what is transition process? What is building identity around what I do? Not just where I work. And it was a really good paper. And, I'd like to offer a couple of different aspects for it. Is that one thing that we have to realize is that a lot of times we're speaking our identity to others. So we're letting other people know who we are, what we do, what we stand for. All of our verbal communications with other people is, I don't want to say it's performative, but we're letting people know what we're about. And then our activities and behaviors really should try to balance that and match what we claim we are, right? And that will give you not only a sense of accomplishment, but it aligns. If you say you are this to people and you actually do that, then there's no cognitive dissonance. You're not sitting back going, man, I let this person down because of X, right? So that's kind of I guess a deeper perspective on what you were talking, but I found that really aligned to what you were saying.
So to summarize, part of that I took away is you transitioned the intensity you had at work into the parts of your life that there wasn't before. And that's really what transitioning is about, right? And because you don't spend enough time in that space when you're on active duty, right? You're doing too much other stuff. So that's really what it's all about. And that's probably helpful in how you were able to transition to what you have to now. I think transition also is an ongoing experience. We go over and over again as we go through life. It's not a one-time thing, but the transition, that first phase outside the military is an important phase. And I failed to ask you this when I brought it up earlier, your time as a recruiter and that being such an important job right now. What piece of advice do you have for recruiters right now trying to get people to come join the military?
Well, I think it really comes down to what I mentioned right at the end there, is when you're talking to these individuals that potentially will join the Marine Corps, is that what you're saying, that your actions follow that. If you're claiming that the Marine Corps is XXXXX and you can join it and become XXX, you need to make sure that you are those intangibles that you are claiming, or that you exude those intangibles that you're claiming. There are individuals out there everywhere throughout society that want to be Marines. They want to be or in the military in general. And they have role models that they see. But as a recruiter, when you come in front of that young person that potentially could join, you need to put your best foot forward. You need to control your own behaviors, and you need to understand that this whole, putting folks in the military is bigger than you, and that you're doing it for the country. That's really hard to do while you're out there. It really is, but you can't do it. I'll use the diet analogy. The goal of a good diet is not that you eat like that constantly, but majority of the time you're eating like that, right? So majority of the time you need to be putting whatever you're saying, you need to be putting that forward. All those behaviors that aren't conducive to that person joining the military, you probably need to get rid of it. Maybe you even need to find out what those are. You may not know what those are, those behaviors that are exclusive to someone joining the military. Does that answer your question?
It does, and that it also speaks to the next part of this, and is that I know that sometime after you separated, you became a career coach.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that experience and how many veterans came through your career coaching. How many civilians did you have? And did you see differences with resumes? And how does your time as a recruiter relate to your time as a career coach? And what did you see with veteran resumes during that time?
Wow, that's a great question. I've actually given it a lot of thought. So how did me being on recruiting help me with career coaching now? One thing that recruiting duty did do for me is give me a process to, I don't want to say use, but to evaluate myself, right? And so I self-reflect a lot on what am I doing and am I actually helping, the individual, or am I doing something else? With that, I did a lot of self-reflecting on what I did on recruiting duty, and a lot of what I said earlier about making sure you put your best foot forward and repressing behaviors are self-reflective of what I had to do. I use that, now when I'm talking to individuals. So my career coaching has been pretty sporadic. I've helped a lot of folks. I'd say, matter of fact, I can open up what I call my mentorship folder, and I can tell you. 1 second here. So since 2016 or 15, actually, I'm looking at a folder that's older than that. So 2015, looks like 102 folks that I've worked with.
Wow.
And I'm looking at names that I still keep in contact with. Not everybody on here is military, and a lot of them on here, are recent, meaning within the last year, last 6 months or so. I connect with folks, and we can be talking, and we could be on the friendship level, right? Just connecting here and there. And then it may come up, hey, Jerry, I'm thinking about doing X or doing, and the conversation goes to, career development or career improvement, and we'll talk about it. And we'll figure out ways that we can either help each other, I help them to move to a different level. I say level, whatever that is, but move to something else, right? And it can range from helping with resumes to just kind of thinking about what do I really want to be doing, to opening up a business, all kinds of different areas. And it's ongoing. It doesn't really ever stop. Sometimes I won't talk to someone for several months, and then out of the blue, I get a call, or I'll even reach out to them and be like, hey, just checking on you, see how you're doing. But yeah, it's kind of organic for me. And it's something I do because I enjoy it. So I'm not getting paid for it. It's not a career for me. It's just something that I enjoy doing.
Wow.
Oh,
That's impressive.
yeah.
102.
So hopefully I answered your question. I think there was a little bit more in there that I may have missed.
Well, I mean, you answered it just the way that you should have. It's great. So these people that you see that you're helping make the transition, is there a common theme, a common barrier you see that you have to help people with, or what's the most common thing you see and that people need to coached out of?
If there was a common quality, because each person, of course, is different. If there was a common quality that I could put a name to it, and it's something you and I have talked about so much, it has to do with self-efficacy. I'm always finding that self-efficacy is really key. Just hearing that, anyone feels that a person can potentially do even more than what they're doing now, or accomplish something that they may believe that at the time that they can't. Just hearing someone say, oh man, you could do that with your eyes closed, or man, let's do it. Let's figure it out. That I found is huge. And what's even bigger than that, though, and you know how self-efficacy works, is that over time, the continued persistent moving towards that goal, it builds that self-efficacy, and it's not a confidence, but it's, oh yeah, I can learn how to do that. I can accomplish that, and it's just going to be incremental. It's just going to take time, and then you realize that's really life, right? Life is continuing, reaching some type of goal and pushing the goal a little bit further.
I'm so happy you said self-efficacy because I mean that is the other leg of this whole experience, and it was in the invite as well. And there's questions about self-efficacy, and I think that we get trained in a way that we have group efficacy as active duty service members. Some of us develop self-efficacy, not everybody does, but I think I see a lot of veterans coming out of the military thinking that they are able to do what individually what they did as a group before. And those things happen in groups. People do things, you have help, you have support. And if you don't create that group when you get out, then you are by yourself and you are doing it alone. But in the end, all the research shows that, and it's obvious on paper and it's on black and white and it's in real life, each individual is responsible for their own transition and their own success, and that nobody is going to be able to help them do anything more than they can help themselves. So I don't think that we learn self-efficacy enough in our military training or in TAPS class or any other or most VSOs that I'm seeing kind of researching. I particularly didn't use a VSO while I transitioned out. Didn't use it till I was doing research for my doctorate. It is a key feature that has been, researched significantly, but hasn't quite made its way to that space yet. Is it?
Yeah.
Any ideas why?
So I agree with the statement, but I would call it specific or organized self-efficacy engagement, right? Because self-efficacy is such a huge part of what we do, everybody. And the attempt is there, right? So they're teaching us how to write a resume. That's building self-efficacy. They're teaching us how to go to an interview. They're teaching us, but they don't, what you're pointing to is that they're not specifically honing in on, the four different proven ways to improve self-efficacy. It's not focused enough. And I think that's what you're pointing to, because it's aggregate, right? It's there, but it's not there. There's a word I'm looking for. And I think it's aware. It's not specific. It's not specifically saying, okay, let's organize this program in these four different ways to help improve this service member's self-efficacy for the transition process, right? So they're doing it, like for example, you mentioned earlier, Russell, right? Russell naturally helps build self-efficacy in individuals. He just does it, right? And I think he does it without even knowing that he's building self-efficacy in people. If he was a little bit more aware and knew that there was a formula for building self-efficacy, he could take it even further. So yeah, no, I agree. They're not doing it enough, is what I would say, and that it should be more specific and pull in the tools that you and I know are out there to build self-efficacy, to build identity, to build group efficacy, and see where that will take individuals.
I want to get in touch with Russell Levy and see what else he's up to these days.
He's busy. I can tell you that right now. So I'm helping a friend of mine. We've been working together for some time. And this was maybe about a month ago. I told him, hey, reach out to Russell, and join this program. Matter of fact, just yesterday, I got an email from this person, and it was asking me to review their resume, and their resume, really the resume they're creating right now is based off of what they're doing with Russell, the safety world. And so that's where that self-efficacy, comes into play.
So, changing gears on you here,
Yeah.
and I've 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 used up most of this time what we just discussed, and I haven't brought up your book yet. And I want to kind of get into the transition from what we just discussed, efficacy, career satisfaction, and go into this changing reality we have with what is happening in the workplace. Being an early adopter and implementer of AI in my business, I've watched this happen for longer than most people, and I just can't tell you how incredibly fast it has moved. And people see it on TV now, and it's so much in the news that people don't even know how much really to think and what's real. And you're
Right.
seeing, different layers. And I think, my position on AI is that integrated AI is going to be the way to go. Having dedicated AI assistants will be cool, but the way we're using these large language models now as hit and miss is going to dissipate as it gets integrated into everything else, right? But so tell me about your book. Tell me about your views on AI and the workplace, and I'll be quiet.
Okay. Yeah. So my book, I published it last November. Second edition will be published this November. I'm waiting for Sora to finally be in the hands of everybody. So hopefully that'll happen before November. It's going to be a huge part of my book. What I'm seeing right now is an extension of ourselves. We always created tools, right? We always been tool creators, the fire, the wheel, the printing press. And so we've just created another tool that really is an extension of ourselves, even more so than previous tools created. And the reason why is because this tool is attempting to mimic what we already do. It does it in a different way, of course, but it's really, we've watched it over the last few years really, really speed up being able to mimic what we do. And so these large language models that are being pushed out, and there's several of them. And I don't know if you got to see, I had a conversation with a gentleman just the other day, and we ended up talking about your concept about wrapping AI into species and into, different domains and stuff. And he took a crack at it, and it actually looks really good. And I've been playing around with what he wrote, for the last few days, because I think there's some utility in there. But what we need to do in order to use this analogy or metaphor is we really need to look hard at what we use the tree for, right? What do we use the genetic makeup for? How do we use it there? And then start porting some of that over to how we could use it to work with AI.
So I did see that comment, and I was starting to respond, and then it got to be really a difficult response because I saw what was there, and I didn't give it full enough thought because it didn't have the feature that I think the taxonomy of things have.
Yes.
Is that as you're going down the scale, it's narrowing the funnel based on features that no longer exist or do exist within that particular. And so I think before you can start going down, you have to identify what the features are and how important they are, and relative to the existence and growth of this species or different,
And I think that is exactly what Herb was looking for. Is he just put something together? He thought it was a novel idea, and I told him, I was like, well, if you think it's so good, I said, jump on there, man, and say something about it. And I think that all three of us, and probably whoever jumps in there, we might be able to come up with something pretty significant that would shed some light, because one of the problems that I explain in my book is the explainability of AI and trust in something and its output. It needs to be explainable. And this may be just, one of those tools that helps explain AI to the layman, to the person that may not know much about it. That I think is huge to be able to do. So more about that is AI, because it's an extension and it's a tool. It's doing and it's gonna do even more so. Is one, it's going to allow folks that may not have been able to enter certain markets to be able to enter those markets. It's already doing that. It's not only are people going to be able to enter that market, but they're going to be able to enter that market and quickly learn the things that, typically could have taken, 3, 4, 5 years for someone to learn. That part is kind of where some of the contention comes from, is because it is an equalizer of the sorts. And so then that puts into question, the question, the idea of merit. The internet did the same thing when it came to marketing, right? Like the small, mom and pop grocery store could advertise as ubiquitous as these large grocery stores if they chose to, just because of the reach of the internet. And so, AI is going to do and is doing the same thing. So you mentioned some of the assistants or co-pilots, agents, whatever you want to call it. I think that's going to be significant also, especially as they get better. One of the things that I find or am finding as I kind of show different people within my organization on how to use Copilot, Notebook LM, or one of the different AI models, is that the simple tasks, that we really can do very quickly. Not only can we do them quickly now, but the minor mistakes that we used to make are now gone. The misspelling in emails, the forgotten concept in an email, or the forgotten concept in a meeting. If you're using a co-pilot to record or make a transcript of a meeting, people are no longer forgetting, concepts or forgetting tools, or ideas, tasks, and so I think that kind of pushes us forward, because if we're not forgetting things, then we're not making mistakes as much, which means our accuracy is going up. We just talked about how much faster we can do things. And I don't think fast is really the answer we're looking for. I think accuracy is really what we're looking for. But with accuracy comes speed. And I think that's an important piece to go. And so my book is really trying to just give us a way to discuss AI in a way that isn't scary, and it's kind of balanced, because I'm saying, hey, it can do this, but it also can do this, right? And those two things may not be compatible, but knowing that it can do this and that we should avoid doing that other thing, I think is important for folks to understand, especially when it comes to the ethical side. My future revision is going to have a deeper analysis on the ethics of AI. I wrote a Medium article on Medium about I called it the moral algorithm, and it really talks about the different elements of the ethical side, the moral side of using AI, which I think is something that we need to really discuss as well. Another factor that's going to come out, and because we've had some time now, a year since I released it, is we're going to start talking about, the Microsofts, the OpenAIs, the Metas, and that these folks, they have the power and they can be influenced by us. And so if they can be influenced by us, then that's kind of a form of democracy. And so AI can be democratized. So they're trying to make a profit, which is our money. That way, that means that we do have some influence there. If we recognize it, if we do completely recognize what kind of influence we have, then we can influence it and make AI what we want it to be.
You're thinking that we can influence AI ethics with our dollars?
We can, yeah, we absolutely can, if we recognize it and if we want to, and if the numbers are right, absolutely. You think about it. Let's say Apple is really producing a better product, for AI. Now, this better product is morally and ethically charged, right? So, it's really open. There's some explainability, in there. If we put our money there, guess what has to happen? The others have to follow suit. However, if if Meta is over there and they make something that works really great, right? And if we go over and put our money over there, but it's not ethical, then they're gonna have the power, right? So if we pay attention enough, to what's going on and put our money where the moral or ethical, where we believe the moral and ethical piece is. This is just democracy, right? Like, we vote for a president that, maybe maybe doesn't accomplish what we claim. That's democracy, right? And then we change it for the future, and we can do the same thing. I believe that, and I think it as long as we can build the numbers around that, just like we would do with, voting and things like that, that we can.
Thank you for that response. And one last question here. I think I want to be mindful of your time. One thing I want to do. So this isn't the world's first podcast. Obviously, there's hundreds of other podcasts, thousands of podcasts. There's probably hundreds of veteran podcasts alone, right? And I don't want to go out and redo what they're doing. Not necessarily trying to re-interview the people they've re-interviewed. What I actually want to do is download them, feed the transcripts to AI, and then summarize them and go, this is what every other veteran podcast already talked about. Here's the summary. Boom. Now here we are, May 6, 2024, going forward. What are we doing? What else has happened? Right. Because I found that, the research in the veteran employment space I was doing for my degree, that, there were people would reference the past, and then we would try to go and figure out, what they were saying and what it means now. But what is happening in this space? What has happened in this space that we can see if we pull all the data collectively? And that's kind of what should be happening in other fields too. And what I imagine other fields are doing, they're collecting data and they're figuring out ways to go use this now that they're smarter. But I don't know if anybody's really doing that for veteran employment. I don't know if that's that important of a deal because of these rosy numbers we see on TV about this low unemployment rate that includes officers and all the other things with the discrepancy with the number of veterans actually in that pool, it's less than 200 people, right? So less than 200 veterans in the U.S. make up the stat you see on TV. That's terrible. So because they're calling houses and, hey, whoever answers the phone for one, who stays on the call for two, that's the person that's responsible for the number you see on television. And we should find a better way to see the truth and reality here. So what's your thoughts on what I just described there in using AI that way?
I think that's a great idea. I really do. I think there should be some checks and balances to it, meaning that, the first output or, challenge the output, maybe, take a sample of the output and validate it, just to make sure that, what you're getting is, accurate, and then move forward. But I think I think it's completely possible to do that, to aggregate, all the various different podcasts, transcripts, feed what you can, into, probably the best one to use right now would be Gemini, 1.5. It's right now they're given 90 days free. And you're talking about, I think it's a million tokens right now, so that might be, the best way to go about it. But yeah, I think that's a great way. I'd love to see the prompt, that you use, and the process of improving the prompt to get the output you want. I think the prompt is going to be key. to pull the information you want out of it.
Sure. And then, I mean, the entire model, I think it's gonna be hard to collect everything too. So it's a lot of data.
It is.
It's a whole research project. But the bigger picture of this is that, I have all this data that already exists that I've already got, and I'm doing these podcasts with experts like you. You get a lot of these put together. There may be enough stuff here for a real documentary about this space. There hasn't been one in some time that's not sponsored by somebody who's,
Trying to accomplish something specific.
right, right. And I think that this is a topic that Americans can care about and get behind, and want to know the truth about. Because whenever I talk about how the stats are created, and the fact that salaries for veterans are so under what they're supposed to be compared to the civilian counterparts, people don't believe it till I show them actual data and stats and
Yeah.
research. They're like, "Oh, I never knew about this." It's like, this is real and we experience it all the time. So how can we make it better? So I appreciate you coming on this podcast, being here for the first episode, and your advice and how to make it get to the next level of Netflix. See,
Yeah, let's do it. Appreciate it, brother. Thanks for having me on, man. Really do.
anything before I turn this recording off?
No, life is cyclical. It keeps going.
All right.